Hello and welcome to the NAB AFL preseason and rookie drafts on afl.com.au and the AFL Live official app. I'm Riley Beveridge and I'm joined by our draft guru, Cal Toomey. Cal, we're on the home straight.
We certainly are, Riley. We had 20 picks on Wednesday night in the first round of the NAB AFL draft. We had 45 on Thursday night, obviously equaling 65 across the national draft. Now we see some AFL lifelines come through. Potentially over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll see some fresh faces come into the system via the rookie draft in particular. So how this will play out will be the pre-season draft coming up first, and clubs will have an opportunity to list someone and get them onto their senior list through that avenue. And then what will follow will be the rookie draft after that. So things kicking off in a few moments, and it'll all be conducted externally again.
Externally, so they're all going to join externally and lodge their picks. You know the draft as good as anyone. Of all the talent that went over the last two nights, what's it like? What's left? What are clubs looking for today?
Yeah, I think there's some players that have slipped through the national draft to be options for clubs today, and there's a number of tall players who could come into contention for clubs. Is it the likes of Felix Flockhart, who's a key forward who's got some interest out there? There's Charlie Dean, who was the rising star in the VFL this year. Where does he fit in for clubs who are making their choices? In the end, I think there's probably a number of about 10 to 12 likely new faces to come through the system via the rookie draft today. Here's some of Flockhart's work for the Sandringham Dragons. But I think that what we'll see across the best part of today, though, will be the reselecting of AFL players who've been delisted. And there's a number of those as well who will see clubs who had to shift their list around to ensure that they could use 3 active picks at the national draft, which is part of the rules, of course, which meant that some players had to be delisted with the commitment and the promise, of course, for them to then be picked up by their holder clubs in the rookie draft. There's Cam Ellis-Yeoman at Brisbane, a couple of guys, Matt Cottrell and Lockie O'Brien at Carlton, obviously have that commitment there from the Blues if they get through to that point of the draft. Isaac Chugg at Collingwood, Connor Blakely at Fremantle, all the way through to Noah Cumberland and Biggie Newen at Richmond as well. So, and even Louis Taylor at the Swans, a former rising star there at the Lions, who crossed the Swans a couple of years ago on a 3-year deal. So these are the sort of names that we'll see feature as part of the rookie draft. And in between them, some clubs will be picking off some talent that skipped through the national draft, and maybe there were a couple of surprises in who got through overnight.
So talk to us about that. The NAB AFL pre-season draft is due to start at around 3 p.m, so about 2 minutes. Just before we get to that, though, we've just had the national draft. Name me some of your big winners from that.
Yeah, Fremantle was a big winner. I think they come out of it in a really strong hand with 3 West Australians in the first 21 picks and 3 really good ones too, in Jai Amos, the key forward, Neil Erasmus and Matt Johnson as the midfielders. Then they topped off their night with the Next Generation Academy player in Eric Benning. And while we're on Next Generation Academy players, they're also potential rookies as part of this process too, which is lodged separate to the draft. So if the clubs wanted to list their players who got through the national draft and they're already tied to them as Next Generation Academy players, they can do that basically automatically on Friday. So Dominic Aku, Carlton, St Kilda's Josiah Kyle, and also Jack Peris there, Nova Peris' son, obviously a speedster in the forward half. There's a couple of options for there. Paul Harsbrook at also the Hawthorn Football Club. They've all been nominated, so that gives them the right to do that, and that would be separate to the rookie draft that's coming up as we speak.
So talk to us through the order today, how it's determined, and how many clubs you think will take picks, because you reported on afl.com.au earlier today that North Melbourne obviously has the first selection because it is in reverse at ladder order, but they're going to do what you spoke about before and just take a player that they'd already delisted in Jared Polec.
That's right, and that's the thing, isn't it? Because they are out of spots, so that's where on a senior list they're going to go that way, and he does have 2 years to go on his contract, so they will be at the point where they are just making that official now, I guess, at this point. They took 5 picks in the national draft across the 2 days. So that's where we get to the stage of the rookie draft where it's a different rookie draft than it has been in the past, isn't it? It's a very different process, and some will be for it, some will be against it, and some will say, well, what's the difference between the lists? Well, that's for the AFL to work through, but there is this capability for the clubs to be able to push players and open up spots on the senior list. So that's where that one lies, and Jared Polec will be what we expect to be the first pick in the rookie draft today.
Clubs are just logging in as we speak. There's a bevy of club recruiters that are just asking questions, doing their thing, trying to get in touch with their telecommunication side, I guess. And
yeah, they're all logging in. We can see all the faces here. They're all smiles on board. We're back to Zoom connection. Obviously, the national draft was back to an in-person event over the past couple of days at Marvel Stadium. Last year, I think clubs became accustomed, clearly, in 2020 to do these things electronically. And the rookie draft has always been subject to clubs doing that from their home bases and their club bases. That used to be in a little bit of a dial-up via phone.
Fax machine, almost.
almost that way. And it wasn't certainly the glitz and glamour that we've seen that the NAB AFL national draft has become as an event. So the rookie draft will be over pretty swiftly. It's not something that has the same sort of flow-on effect that the national draft does have.
We're expecting a couple of players who have been delisted from their former clubs to get lifelines elsewhere today as well. The likes of Trent Dumont, Levi Casbolt, they're in this mix as well, aren't they?
Yeah, Levi Casbolt, all but short of going to Gold Coast. Obviously, a long career at Carlton, and he'll be there to add some strength and backup to their forward line and also in the ruck department as well if they need it. We know they took Mac Andrew at the Wednesday first round draft with pick number 5, and he's a key position player who certainly has a lot of scope going forward, but that'll come in time. As for Trent Dumont, there has been some interest from Port Adelaide as well, so that can happen either through this period or potentially even through the train-on period. And that is another option that clubs are looking for as well when they look ahead to what they do today in a rookie sense. Some clubs will keep some spots open so that they can invite some players to do some train-on stints over summer as part of the pre-season supplemental selection period. And clubs are open then to add those players right up until basically round 1 next year. Then again, there's also the option for clubs to hold over a spot until the mid-season draft next year, which of course North Melbourne did in 2020 where they opened up a spot and then knew that the likelihood of them being probably towards the bottom of the ladder would mean they might be able to pick off a young talent that skipped through the draft last year. Well, they did that in Jacob Edwards. So we know the success rate of rookies across history. There's been so many great ones. We've been seeing Brownlow medalists and premiership captains and superstars come off the rookie list. Well, hopefully today provides a couple more of those sort of stories as clubs work through their selections. But it is a different sort of feel to the rookie draft in the years past, as we spoke about. A very small handful of selections. I think clubs probably expected maybe fewer selections that actually were taken across the national draft, 65 in the end, which is 6 more than what they were last year and probably more in line with what the trend had been 3 or 4 years ago when list numbers were a little bit higher, pre-COVID-19 obviously striking. So that has made a little bit of an impact on what happens there. But there's no doubt that today will be a shorter run in terms of players coming through.
I think we're just waiting for the final few clubs to log in to the rookie draft, and they all are in now. So we should be getting to the NAB AFL pre-season draft, which will be the first one to go down. North Melbourne obviously holding the first pick in that. We're not 100% sure if there will be any picks.
Well, Gold Coast expected here to take Rory Thompson back on their list that way. So obviously delisted him as part of their opening the list spots. That process that saw Hugh Greenwood, of course, delisted, and they were planning to take him as a pick back on. Rory Thompson we expect to be the Gold Coast selection
also
at this point.
Adelaide and Essendon have left spots open in the pre-season draft. So Gold Coast have taken Rory Thompson with what is the 3rd pick of the pre-season draft.
Well, essentially pick 1 because
brought him back onto the list.
With pick 1 there, they've taken Rory Thompson because the club's ahead of them passed, so that was the first live pick.
Crows on the clock now with the 2nd pick of the NAB AFL pre-season draft. And they have recruited, they're just putting in the numbers as we speak, Luke Nankervis from the Sandringham Dragons. Yeah,
they had some interest things. Some other clubs were looking at Luke Nankervis as well, and he's a good pick. I think this is a nice selection for them. He reminds me a little bit of Ed Langdon with his run and carry off the wing. There's real athleticism to his movement. He's a little bit unlucky at stages to not get the opportunities that other players did get. He missed out on some Vic Metro selection earlier this year, but he's a workhorse through the midfield. Got a little bit of a unique character too, Riley. He's a Star Wars fanatic. He absolutely loves the Star Wars movies. He's got the rat tail as well that will stand out and make him a bit of a cult hero potentially.
And Skywalker.
But there is no doubt about the fact that he does have some traits there. So then after that pick though,
Essendon has passed.
Essendon has
with
passed.
Their pre-season selection. So now we will get into the NAB AFL rookie draft. We're expecting more picks here. Just the 2 used. Just on that pick, does that mean he's part of their senior list or
so
rookie list?
That gives him senior opportunities now. So that's a great result for him, having missed out last night and had some hopes and interest late in the piece last night. I think that's a good pick from the Crows and a running machine that could power next to Lockie Scholl, and we know some of the great running players that the Crows do have. Ned McHenry, another one who's right at the front of the time trials. Well, Luke Nankervis might be a test for them coming up shortly. And look, that was a very swift draft. There was 2 picks.
Swifter than last night.
Rory Thompson and then Luke Nankervis from the Sandringham Dragons, and adds to the Sandringham Dragons link. It's been a great draft for the Sandringham Dragons. Yep. Again, headlined, of course, by Finn Callaghan. And Blake Howe's got his moment last night too.
Recruiters are just getting ready for the NAB AFL rookie draft. A few smiles in the room.
We see Derek Hine there at Collingwood. We expect him to have the first live pick, I guess.
Yes, because you'd think North Melbourne, as you said, just taking Jared Pollock.
They have the first live pick there. There's the second pick, so that one's there. We see Kinnear Beatson from the Swans, Jason Taylor from the Melbourne Footy Club, of course, Brett Anderson from Port Adelaide, Dave McMullen and the team at Fremantle there, Don Malisi at the Western Bulldogs, Simon Murphy has logged in from the Cats as well. Liam Woodland and Andrew Mackey, of course, the former great defender at the Cats now, steering their list management team. So all zoomed in and ready to go for the rookie draft as we get underway pretty shortly.
So clubs have sort of manipulated this within the rules now to take players and to sort of manipulate their salary cap and to get that under control, to get their list spots under control. That's why you're seeing players like Jared Pollock go with the first pick to North Melbourne. There'll be a few more. I think Carlton are going to take Lockie O'Brien and Matt Cottrell, as you've mentioned. And there's going to be a lot of players. Sam Mays, I think, delisted at Port Adelaide.
Sam Mays and, of course, Ben Davis were given the exemption to nominate for the draft. So they will be available to their clubs, and Sam Mays goes back to Port Adelaide, Ben Davis back to Adelaide as well. So that will be the majority of selections across today. And in between that, we hope to see some fresh faces as well, because it's always, they're the storylines, aren't they? And, there's been maybe some career lifelines, as we mentioned before. Ben Keys a couple of years ago was picked in the rookie draft, wasn't he, from the Crows? And what a great restart to his career he's had at Adelaide since joining them after his time at Brisbane. So will we get one of those surprises? I think there's a chance of that, because they're the type of highlights that we like out of the rookie draft. Who can be the type of player who can have that moment and get that opportunity? He might have had some AFL interest out there. They've had delisted free agency. They've had national draft. Now they get another opportunity through the rookie draft this afternoon.
So Collingwood, as you mentioned, first live pick. Do you have any inclination as to what they might do, what they got last night, how it might impact what they do today?
Well, I think they were looking at some tools late in the piece in the draft, and we mentioned Felix Flockhart, a ruck forward, Charlie Dean, a key back who was eligible for the draft a couple of years ago. There's a chance for him to be in that range. Jed Rule's another one, a key defender. They obviously took Nick Dacos early in proceedings on Wednesday night, and then took 3 South Australians as well, in terms of Arlo Draper, Cooper Murley and Harvey Harrison on Thursday night. So it's a bit of a blend for them, but amongst that group, there aren't any tools in there. And speaking to Derek Hine on the Road to the Draft podcast several weeks ago, he did speak about how the Pies could look to identify some extra key position depth at some point. So that would be an area that they could look at potentially with pick 2 here in the rookie draft once that comes through.
We are just waiting for these selections to be made. They're just entering them as we speak. Collingwood, as you mentioned, have got a good record of drafting from the rookie draft in terms of key position stocks. They've, of course, got Brody Mychek from Port Melbourne a few years ago. They got him as a key defender, and they've turned him into a really nice key forward. So we're underway now with the NAB AFL rookie draft. And it is North Melbourne, as we know, on the clock. They will just take Jared Pollock. We are expecting...
It'd be a bit of a surprise if it was not.
It would be. It would be. So the Kangaroos are officially... Do we say on the clock when it's the rookie draft, Cal?
Yeah, we say on the clock, or on the spreadsheet anyway. Slightly different process tonight or this afternoon than the previous couple of nights, and they're hovering over that column under the player's name.
Collingwood wait as we speak. We're expecting not all of these picks. So I think there was 39. Clubs have the option of taking 39. Of course, not all of them are going to be players that weren't already listed.
And that's for the reasons we spoke about before, the train-on opportunities that are available to clubs, the mid-season opportunities, and sometimes even the salary cap restrictions on different clubs and how tight certain clubs are. And clubs can go in with different level of lists, different number of senior listed players versus rookies and vice versa. So there is that option for clubs available, and everybody does it a little bit differently depending on where they are at as a club and how many picks they wanted to take and how much their investment was in the national draft. Sometimes clubs might opt to ease out of the national draft, maybe like Carlton did this year, and take just the one pick and target the trade period, which they did pretty successfully.
Well, take us through clubs that might be in the situation like as Carlton is in, because Liam Jones obviously retired. They'll get to fill that spot through the pre-season supplemental selection period, which means they'll have a train-on player that can stay with them all the way through in March. We know Sydney's going to do that to list Paddy McCartan. Didn't nominate for the national draft, as you reported, so they can't take Paddy McCartan today. But as of tomorrow, they can bring him to the club as a train-on player.
Well, yeah, pretty soon. And that's the thing. He will get to the Swans that way. We had Kinnear Beatson on the draft night countdown shows earlier this week and said that's just waiting for the final tick of approval. But all things headed that way, which is really exciting. So I think that's a good moment for Paddy and the competition as well, to see a former number one pick who we know has had the injury, concussion issues throughout his career, but just hopeful that he gets a really good run in, and he's got a lot of people in his side and in his corner. Paddy McCartan to get that opportunity again at the Swans. He was playing as key defender, key forward at the Swans of AFL side this year, so he's one who will go through to that SSP program and sign with the Swans that way. Another one in that bracket is also at North Melbourne in Tom Lynch.
Yes.
So he's also eligible to go that way as a pre-season supplemental period selection.
And we have a pick. North Melbourne's taken Jared Polek. Slight anticlimax, but he's back on their list. They have relisted him after delisting him a couple of weeks ago.
Pick 2 with Collingwood, and they've picked Charlie Dean. So
does get his place on an AFL list.
He's come out of the VFL. Yeah, and it's a great result. Overlooked a couple of years ago, and that's where now he gets an opportunity for himself to. It's okay. Just to manage to get there and get to that point. So yeah, it's a matter of what we do as players and the resilience he shows to get overlooked after a couple of years and still to come back and be a player who can dominate it in defensive lines and mark overhead. He started it as a key forward, so I think what we've seen from him over the past couple of seasons has been a development in another part of the ground. And you've got a theory, don't you, Riley? You don't give up on a key forward until they go back. And Collingwood clearly have seen enough to take a chance with Charlie Dean.
It's a good news story. He's won obviously the Fothergill Round medal, which has a long and distinguished history of bringing players onto AFL lists. A few more players just going through now. Gold Coast has taken Levi Casbolt, which we knew about at pick 3. Adelaide's relisted Ben Davis. Hawthorn's taken Ned Long. Yeah,
Ned Long, a midfield option who's one of the best runners in the draft, a player from the Northern Knights program. Was a bit unlucky to be overlooked, to be honest, at the national draft. And we see his size, he's got a good shape. He'll join a teammate at the Knights and now at the Hawks in Josh Ward at that footy club, and they'll know each other's strengths back to front. One of the best runners in the draft and certainly has that capacity to really get going and get his motor up. So a clearance specialist, a bigger body, and will complement what they've got at the Hawks really well. And I think the Hawks will be pretty happy with what they see to get him through to this point, because he was, speaking to clubs this morning, really unlucky to not get a chance on Thursday night.
So Carlton's relisted Lockie O'Brien, Richmond's gone for Biggie Nuon, and Fremantle has drafted Carl Warner with the 8th pick out of the Oakley Chargers.
Yeah, another player who bit blitzed earlier this season with his run and carry, and there's no doubt that he can do a lot of things out of that defensive line. So just want to keep an eye on from the Oakley Chargers program. There's a capacity for him to find the footy. The Oakley Chargers over a period have been one of the great breeding grounds in terms of prospects coming through the AFL system. So he's one that gets his opportunity here, and Fremantle for the first time across the drafts pick a player outside of WA for this time around. And we see some of his performance here, Carl Warner playing for Vic Metro in the mid-season trial game. So he can go in the air, and that's a bit of a skill for him as well.
So St Kilda and West Coast have passed. More good news for the Oakley Chargers because Patrick Voss has landed at the Bombers.
Okay, Patrick Voss. So he's a member who has been a member of the Giants Academy. So he's been a key back / midfielder, and that's a weird mix potentially, but he does produce a little bit of extra movement throughout the midfield and across half back as well. So he's a booming kick. He's got some power and adds a mature frame, I would say, for a player his age to what they're doing at the Bombers. So they've obviously targeted him in that category. And it's a good story because, as we say, the Giants had not committed to listing him as an academy player. He's been playing for the Oakleigh Chargers, where he's been studying at Wesley College. So a great result for them to get Patrick Voss through. And now he's a Bomber. So a really good win there for Patrick Voss. Not a relation to Michael.
The Swans land Lewis Taylor. They were going to draft him anyway. GWS has taken Cooper Hamilton.
Yeah.
Which is another very good news story.
Yeah, and they interviewed him recently, the Giants, and Cooper Hamilton had some interest at the top end of the rookie draft and even late last night. I think there'll be a lot of people in Clubland pretty pleased for Cooper Hamilton to get this chance. He can play in defence, he can play in the midfield, he's a bigger body. He dominated some school games this year. He played some great footy as well for the Bendigo Pioneers and also the Vic Country program. So, as we say, it comes through some elite programs, got some power, and certainly has the ability to get out of a stoppage and there we see make a tackle stick. So, Cooper Hamilton, he heads to them, and that's a great result for him. And as we say, a little bit unlucky to get a chance there.
Brisbane has relisted Cam Alice-Yeoman, and I love this story. Geelong's taken Oliver Dempsey from Old Carey Grammarians. You were all over this earlier this week.
The Smoky, out of the school footy competition, he played for Old Carey. He also played for Carey Grammar, and there were some recruiters watching him at school level earlier this year, and he's taken the eye. He's a midfielder / forward. He kicked 6 goals in his last game playing at school level there, and I think there'll be a lot of people excited about what he can do. So he had a couple of clubs looking at him. There were some interested clubs even last night at the draft, but that's the way it's panned out. He's gotten through to the rookie draft, and that's where Ollie Dempsey has landed. So a bit of a raw type and hasn't been through the other systems that many of these players have gone through, but that's okay because the Geelong Scouts are, and sometimes Geelong are known for a little bit of a smoky and a little bit of a roughie, and they've gone with Ollie Dempsey, having last night obviously taken a number of local lads as well.
Port Adelaide's gone with Trent Dumont from North Melbourne.
Okay.
We kind of knew they were going to take him in this period.
Just on Trent, that's a great result though for him, isn't it?
Definitely.
Because what it's a strange story in some ways. You know, 2 years ago he was in the leadership group at North Melbourne. He then played 14 games this season and got squeezed out in the end. They opted for Hugh Greenwood in the end to get a spot on their list, and Trent Dumont was squeezed out. So for him to get a second chance, I think a lot of people would look at him and say that's a really good option for him to do that. And I think that's where, you know, you see these second chances. Why do you think he got pushed out of that North Melbourne group?
It's a tough one. They've brought through a lot of kids over the last couple of years. The North Melbourne Footy Club, obviously a very talented midfield group. He got trialled in a number of different areas. Obviously, he had the the calf injury to start the year as well, which hurt him. He returned to Victoria on Christmas Day last year and hurt his calf and then just couldn't get it right. So that made it very difficult. There's been a few more picks though. Western Bulldogs took Charlie Parker. Melbourne's taken Judd McVie. So Parker coming out of the Sturt program, McVie coming out of East Fremantle. Yeah,
Charlie Parker out of the Sturt program, as you mentioned, of half back. So they've added to their back line in that area of the ground.
The Melbourne Football Club took Judd McVie. As we said, a few more passes. North Melbourne's passed. Collingwood's relisted Isaac Chugg. Gold Coast has relisted Jez McLennan. Carlton's relisted Matt Cottrell. Fremantle has relisted Mitch Crowden. GWS has relisted Jacob Weir. Port Adelaide's relisted Sam Mays. And the Western Bulldogs have taken Robbie McComb.
That's a great story. That's a great story. He was a part of their VFL program for a number of years. He's played local footy. He's a mature age, in his mid-20s. I think that'd be a pump celebration for Robbie McComb today. A smaller type who just gets the footy. Had some interest mid-season at the mid-season rookie draft. A couple of other options also through the VFL program there at Footscray did get some interest. We know one of them landed at Carlton as well through the mid-season period.
Jordan Boyd.
But in the end, Robbie McComb's persistence has paid off, and that's a great story for him because he joins the Dogs. And the VFL program at Footscray has afforded a lot of clubs some opportunities across time, hasn't it?
It has. And that's it, I think. We've just gone through our little draft. A few more players were relisted. Saw Connor Blakely be relisted from Fremantle in amongst that. Pretty good, pretty swift completion to the draft after what happened over the last couple of nights.
Yeah, I think the meeting's just about to close. The recruiters are off to have a moment to themselves after 3 very, very busy days. But I think that what's happened there is we've seen a couple of smokies. There's no doubt about that. It's great to see a couple of those enter the system in Ollie Dempsey and also Charlie Parker. I think there was a little bit of interest in him too. So that's a couple of names that have entered the system, and also some great storylines in Charlie Dean in getting his opportunity too, having been overlooked for a couple of years now, gone back to VFL level, worked on his game, become a different player, and now gets his chance at the Pies. So they bolster their key position stocks with what was the first real live pick at the rookie draft. And later on, Trent Dumont, and that's a big story too, that he gets an
opportunity. Over Trent Dumont, but as you mentioned, he'll get his opportunities at Port Adelaide, which we love, and they've been searching for ways to get players who have played on the wing before, and Xavier Derzer and Carl Amon, back into that inside role. So he could actually free them up to do that long term.
Absolutely, and it bolsters their midfield, and that's clearly been an area for them. They picked up Josh Sin on Wednesday night, and we're wrapped with that on Thursday. Of course, Dante Vicentini was another tool that they took there. Jace Burgoyne entered the frame too as a father-son pick. So overall, a nice haul for the Power, and that's about it for 2021 and the draft intake.
It is, and keep your eye on afl.com.au throughout the rest of the afternoon, because there's also Category B rookies which can get listed.
Yep.
Carlton's taken Dom Arquay, which is a really great story. Played for St Mary's growing up, the same junior club as Sam Philp. He's one of 7, so it's good for him to get a place on a list, and a few more Cat B rookies will be named throughout the day and announced by their own clubs, won't they, Cal?
Yeah, there will be, and that'll be announced in coming moments. So some good stories there, and we'll keep an eye on what the Saints do there with their Next Generation Academy talents too. Jack Peris and Josiah Kyle, an option there for them.
All right, Cal, well, I've loved your work over the last 5 days and over the last 12 months looking ahead to the 2021 NAB AFL draft. That was the 2021 NAB AFL pre-season and rookie drafts. For all the picks, head to afl.com.au and the AFL Live official app.